A lot for other editorials as a freelancer. I have worked for Paizo, writing for Pathfinder, and for Renegade, writing for Power Rangers.
Well, it was important to have dragons in the setting because, well, the game is Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want us to use classical European dragons because, well, Ollitla is inspired by Aztec culture, Aztec myths, and there's a theme there with the colonization, right?
Mm-hmm.
Europe came to to the Americas and started
Mm.
conquesting everything. So I didn't want that to be like a correlation. I didn't feel comfortable with that. And even if we were using the European dragons, there's other sources of inspiration for that, right? For example, Chinese dragons are pretty different. They're more snake-like, and that's because even if you think about that, European dragons and Chinese dragons are two different kinds of mythical creatures, really. But they we call them dragons still because the origin of the word, right? The origin of the word dragon is drakon in Greek, that means big snake.
The serpent.
So yeah, serpent, a big serpent, big serpent, and we have big serpents here in America too, right?
Mm-hmm.
In America too, we have, especially in Mexico, we have Quetzalcoatl, and there's a lot more other coatls, other mythical serpents. For
Shikuat, I
example,
think, is a fire serpent, but
yes, for example, the Chicoatl is a mythological fire serpent that uh, the god of war, which is Bochtli, uses as a weapon, for example.
mm,
And there are many, many others. So the idea was there, right? We have our own mythological serpents. So why don't use that and as an inspiration to make some very unique and very uh, Aztec-inspired dragons, right? So that was the idea. So our dragons are going to be feathered. If they're sky dragons, they're going to have fire breaths if they're fire dragons. But they're going to be inspired by the myths that inspired the entire set.
I really appreciated your advice on this. Because I'll be honest, my first impression, my first idea was to say, we can have the European Dungeons and Dragons dragons. We can have black dragons and red dragons, and they'll just be normal, right? And then you kind of made me aware that they'd be like invaders or colonists. They're from another land. They're these big, powerful forces. They aren't native to the land. And Ollitla and Aztec culture, as you are saying, has its own people, has its own creatures, has its own dragons, right?
Yes, of course, and it's a theme, right? As for many reasons, not comfortable in doing so in this very Aztec inspired, very Mexica inspired setting, right?
And I really appreciate that you helped me realize that because I was mistaken with my own goal, which I knew you were on board with, in that this setting
Yeah, yeah.
doesn't need outsiders. This setting is a world that stands on its own. There can be visitors, there can be outsiders, but it's a world that's independent, free from colonization. No, which isn't to say that you can't have adventurers that come from Forgotten Realms, maybe, on a boat. But this isn't their world to take or to claim or to put their own things in. They're guests, right?
Yes, yes, of course. And colonization in itself is not a theme that needs to be avoided necessarily. You have the examples like Magic the Gathering setting of Ixalan
Mm-hmm.
that has the vampire conquerors and Sun Empire that it's obviously inspired by Aztecs and Mexica people. And so yeah, it's not a thing that's necessary to be. It's not necessarily to avoid, but we should. It's a theme in the region. It is something that happened. It's something that shaped the country. It's something that shaped the culture. And so, if we are going to include something that may allude to that, we need to like. I think we need to embrace that. So, if we were
Right.
going to have European dragons, I would like to, them to be like, yeah, as things that came from
Hmm.
elsewhere and settled there and
I
are
see.
trying to maybe shape the land to what they think is best or something like that.
Hmm.
So, but for the harmony of the setting, I think it was important for us to have our equivalent of dragons. Even if there were going to be European dragons, I think it's important to have these creatures that are heavily inspired by myths. Well, in the real world, dragons are, as I was saying, they are like these huge or big serpents, right?
Hmm.
In its origin, in their origins. Obviously, the perception have changed a long time, and I think now with all the media, the video games, obviously with a lot of Tolkien influence, a lot of
Hmm.
D&D influence, dragons are these powerful beings that they are still mortal, but they have powerful magic. They are
Hmm.
uh, really, they have a lot of time life, right?
Hmm.
And they are powerful and sometimes wise,
Hmm.
right? Wise, even if they are evil, there's this wise evilness, right? And there's also this goodness for them also, right?
I like the power
Um,
thing. That makes a lot of sense because whether they're for good or for bad, they're important.
Yes, and different cultures perceive dragons in different ways, right? In Europe, many dragons are evil in tradition, right? There are even some dragons that are in Christian traditions, representations of the devil and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, there are also good dragons, um, or at least powerful ones, right?
Hmm.
For example, in the Ring of the
Nibelung?
uh, yeah, that one. I don't know how to say that in English.
No,
In
that's all
that
right.
one, there's Fafnir that is a really powerful dragon, not
Who
necessarily an
transformed
evil
from a
one.
dwarf, right?
Yeah,
He was a dwarf who transformed thanks to because of his greed.
I don't remember that part.
Hmm.
I don't remember that there are greedy creatures also. That's where the part we use in D&D that they hoard things come from.
So much big
And
hordes.
yeah, of course. And if you go to China or Japan or Korea, dragons are more akin forces of nature, right?
Hmm.
And there are also good ones and evil ones. They are not so greedy usually, but they are forces of nature, really powerful beings. So the thing in common is these big reptilians, like, and definitely being powerful and wise and have this ability to speak,
Hmm.
this magic to them, right? So that that's what dragons are, kinda. Obviously, it's not a perfect definition. So obviously, using myths um, of the Aztecs and of the Nahuatl people, we can have our own kind of dragons that are snakes also, and they are also very powerful. Quetzalcoatl was a
Hmm.
huge serpent, and he had this power and might because he was a god, right? So or is a god. So that's obviously a point of inspiration.
So, what exactly makes the dragon its own category? Why do we specify? We're having a lot of monsters in Ollitla, so why are dragons different than just all the other cool monsters we have? What makes the dragon in the game?
Well, obviously, one part of doing that is because as the game is called Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Of course.
Dragons have been always an important part of the setting, and it's because they're really an impressive presence
They're
in
cool.
the in. Right, very cool, yeah. And obviously, I think that was in the first place originally because they were cool enemies to fight with, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
in Hero you have these myths of the knight in shining armor fighting the evil dragon, and their power makes them impressive foes, right? But I think they have evolved to be a presence that can shape any setting. Like at least in the campaigns I have played, many times around, the final evil guy is either an undead or a dragon. In what I have played personally,
Mm-hmm.
not it's not that, and I think it's not because that's what the settings are making, right? Obviously, everyone tries to have a lot of variety. Pathfinder in the world of Valarian try to have a lot of variety, but people associate elites and dragons with powerful foes that can shape reality, basically.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not just that they're powerful, but based on what you've been saying, and I think it's because they're cool. It's because they're
Yes,
respectable. Even if they're evil, even if they're good, of course, but they're dignified. They're cool. They're not just these ugly, evil demons or monsters or ugly aberrations. They're
right.
majestic. They're awesome. Not just awesome, like cool, but like wow. You know?
Yes, yes. Actually, recently, a friend of mine that is much older than me, is having a campaign, and he was super excited because he got this Tiamat miniature that it was like this big, and was super excited to put it on the map to confront the players. So, yeah, I think it's also because they're impressive. That you see a miniature of a dragon, and you go, "Wow, we are going to fight that."
But also, they're just like I know cool doesn't mean much because we use it so easily, but they're they're not just like ugly or messed up. They're like people respect dragons. And does that go back to that does go back to Aztec culture and the Mexica people who a lot of European folk just folk knowledge is the serpent, the evil, but the Mexica respected serpents. They were beautiful, and not just beautiful, but important parts of nature and revered, right?
Yeah, well, in different cultures, the snake and the serpent represents the earth, the land, and Mexico is not that much different. Even if we have Quetzalcoatl that is a sky serpent.
Who was the goddess
Um,
of the earth in as in Mexica? The skirt of
yes,
serpents.
yeah, the one with the skirt of serpents is a representation of the mother goddess. She has a lot of representations. One is
Mm-hmm.
of Huatlicue, she of
Mm-hmm.
the skirts of serpents or snakes, and it's an earth goddess, uh, precisely. And snakes are prevalent in color. That's
They're
one
not just going to
the
be one
only
color.
thing.
You're
Yeah,
gold or you're
that,
red.
that, that yes, yes, of course. And I think uh, some of the similarities are they're going to be associated with an element, right? So we are going to try to maintain the breadth. Um,
The breath weapon's cool.
Aspect, yeah, because it's cool, and the resistances, right? But they're going to be more of um, beings with their own agendas, right?
Mm.
That are moving things. They're not going to be regarded as gods. The chromatic
Close to gods,
and
like
Helios,
gods. It's kind of complicated.
yeah, it's kind of complicated. But they're going to be basically wise things that try to help the people in the land, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if helping them may mean different things for them, and that may come
Oh,
through
so you might
conflict,
fight
right?
them because their idea of helping is like we're sacrificing a village because of the bigger picture or because of the nature, right?
Yeah, and maybe that might be shaped by their type, right? For example, they're going to be inspired by other things that are related to serpents of their category. Not necessarily there's not necessarily a one-to-one comparison for all of the dragons, but for example, the ones inspired by Quetzalcoatl are going to be like knowledge and progress, helping communities build things are what mm, makes this world better, right?
And the
And
wind,
some others,
right? Like the winds
yeah,
represented,
yeah,
because as we
yeah.
know, as you know, as we all know, as both of us know, Quetzalcoatl was controlled the winds but also was a life giving knowledge, life and knowledge. I see that
Yes, yes,
connection.
yes. Yeah, Quetzalcoatl was the god of progress in many parts because he gave people many of the in meat, many of the knowledge for growing crops and things like that, right? So he's proposing proponent of progress. So the dragons inspired by him are going to be proponents of progress too, right? And civilization. And for example, as the Akkad, fire dragons might think warring, becoming strong, physical strong, having organized
Firepower.
armies. Yeah, it's what makes the world better, people more prepared to face what's coming, right? Because we haven't talked about this a lot, but something in the world are forces out in our world, in this world. There are also forces that are trying to destroy it.
Like warring forces of nature, almost.
Yeah.
Does that make
So,
sense?
so yeah. So, for example, so many fire dragons, Seoquatls, think having strong armies, organized societies, very stratified, is the best to defend against that. Meanwhile, other dragons may think different.
So
And I
they're
think
not going to
that's
be collecting hordes of treasure and sitting on them. They're going to be like forces of nature, higher spirits, but also guiding the world and society. Is that right?
yes, yes, of course. And we also have the gods, and the gods are present in the land. But dragons also try to, they are powerful beings. They also try to do their part in all this, right?
And so they won't always be like the red dragons are always bad usually. The gold dragons are always good usually, and they hate each other. It'll be like
Yes.
maybe two Tlequat have different ideas of warfare and power. Like one says you need to build your strength by conquering and crushing, and the other says you need to build your strength to defend yourselves. Is that not?
Yeah.
Is that a possibility?
Yes, for example, we can. I was thinking of having like these um, usual alignments and have two or three alignments, not only one, right? Because, for example, for a certified society, legal alignments are the
Limiting.
best, right? Lawful good, lawful neutral, lawful evil. And for progress societies, neutral is the best, right? I am neutral because I'm just looking for
Law and order.
knowledge.
Not good or bad, but lawful and not disorderly.
Yeah, yeah. And and that's going to be interesting to write and to see what people makes of that, right? I think it gives greater flexibility because at least in my case, I have always used dragons as they need to be. I not always go with the all gold dragons are unequivocally good, right? Maybe some are having some schemes that are trying to stop evil and they're using people as pawns for that. That is not something that comes through with their alignment, their classic alignment, but I have used them like that in campaigns, and I think that gives greater flexibility and tells better stories.
One last thing I want to check about our dragons. There'll
Yes.
be four different age groups because of two reasons. One, the four different ages, the young one, the young one, the older one, and the ancient one. That way they can be used not just at the very end where they're high level, but at the beginning where they're low level. But also because as these dragons grow older, they can be more mature and have different perspectives. What do you think of that?
I think um, younger dragons, not the smaller ones, but younger dragons are going to be more prone to try to shape a town or a city in the
Mm-hmm.
way they see it better. And older dragons are going to be on their own business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they decided it's better to leave people be what they wish to be, to evolve on their own instead of meddling, or maybe they are fighting other greater threats, right? Oh boy, that's a difficult one. They are also cool. So I always have liked the earth element, right?
Mm.
So for example, in Avatar, the Lane of Aang, and Avatar, the Lane of Korra, I love the Starfinder. I'm sorry, I messed up the name because
Legend of
in
Korra,
Mexico,
The Last Airbender?
Last Airbender is not called Last Airbender, is called the Lane of Aang. So for
Ah.
us, in the translation, Avatar is Avatar, the Lane of Aang, and then Avatar, the Lane of Korra. So
Oh. Oh,
I
I
always
see.
miss that. Yes, yes, yes. So and I saw Avatar completely like translated. So
Mm-hmm.
I have seen it in the original English, but originally I saw the cartoon in Spanish. So
Ah.
yeah. Well, anyway, I have always liked airbending. Right, it's my
Oh.
favorite type of bending. I love it. I love the movements. I actually do a little bit of martial arts, and I love the strength of the movements.
Mm-hmm.
Air dragons, though, I like them, but there's not a lot about them in classic D&D, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have green dragons and now things like that, but we don't have a dragon that necessarily buries under earth and
Mm-hmm.
paints landscapes with their powers. So I cannot go that way.
You could also
And
pick one
other
of
than
the
that,
Ollitla dragons. You want to be a Asquatl? Or which was the Obsidian
that would
one?
be cool. Yeah, obsidian dragons might be really cool. Imagine being standing there and then you're hailed with sharp blades of obsidian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are going to have to implement some things like that for dragons that their ability to shape landscapes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So dragons are usually not that numerous in a setting because there have to be these important people, right?
Yeah, they
Important
want to be
beings.
so cool if they were just like, oh, there's dragons everywhere, whatever.
Well, it can be there can be a setting if it's built around that, right? That there's a lot of dragons, but
Mm-hmm.
in cities where humans are the prevalent species, it's important for dragons to be not that numerous, or at least not be that present in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, I think little dragons are going to be beings that shape landscapes when they fight, when they truly fight.
So would you be an earth dragon who's more solitary and like underground, or more building buildings and societies and temples or something?
I think I will be fairly solitary. I would like to meddle with people from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe I think one thing we can do and definitely will do, and I should have mentioned this earlier, is to maintain this ability that dragons have to become humanoids
Oh
and
yeah,
just
what? Yeah, they could be
in
shapeshifting.
society. Yeah, and also that's important because, for example, Quetzalcoatl was a governor of a culture for a long time, a human.
Mm-hmm.
So they can maybe some governors are some leaders, some priests, some very important people in the setting. It's a
Mm-hmm.
dragon with people around them knowing they are. So
Definitely.
taking that into account, maybe I will be a little bit less solitary and be more like in a
Meddling
human
involving,
form.
blending in a
It's
little.
not many settings. It's very different colors. We
Mm-hmm.
have I will say European culture as a big containing thing, but there are beings that come from different places, right? Right,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have many settings entirely inspired by Mesoamerican, Latin
Many. Are there
American.
any?
I
Exactly.
I think there are some monsters inspired by them,
There
right?
are some. There
So
are some. But
yeah,
this is.
but the culture itself is very rich, right? We it's the same. In China we have the emperors, right? In Japan we have the shoguns. In Europe we have the kings and also the emperors in other
Mm-hmm.
time periods. But if you see uh, European periods, Roman emperors and Chinese emperors are very different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their differences make for very interesting settings. And we have also kings, and well, there are no kings, there are called kings. We have Tlatoanis and governors and other things like that, that also their their type of society make for a very interesting setting. So if you want to have adventures, you have to discover something new. You want to really go beyond the borders of what you know. That's what this setting is bringing to you, the ability to create new things. And even if it's a setting you can play completely in it, you don't need to have other parts of the world to play in Ollitla. You can also integrate Ollitla in a
Mm-hmm.
really existing setting. Maybe you are travelers that found yourselves going to a this new land, right? So there's a lot of things you can do with the setting. There's brand new monsters, a lot of brand new monsters,
Mm-hmm.
or people in the Nahuatl people, the Mexica people, the Aztec people had they're different people by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They were not necessarily Aztecs are a
So
class
it's
of
something.
Nahuatl
Fra-
people. Yeah, the point is they have their own them demons, their
mm-hmm.
own gods, their own creatures, their own legends that are reflected in this book. It's going to be really how do you say this? Good for game masters to read through the book
Mm-hmm.
because they will receive a lot of new ideas to use for their campaigns. And players are going to be, I'm sure they're going to be stunned by the art of the cities we are making, by the art of the creatures, by the art of the classes, by the way the society is shaped. It's, it's a new world, and a new world brings endless possibilities.